back once again, friends. So great to have you here to paint with me today. In case you didn't see the first video in this series, this is video 2 of this series of tiny loose watercolor flowers in tiny glass jars. So today we are going to be focusing on the yellow poppies in a pink glass jar. So to follow along with me today, a quick refresher to go over supplies. I'm using Arches watercolor paper, a larger sheet broken down into smaller ones, my Princeton Aqua Elite size 6 round brush, and my palette of Daniel Smith and Winsor & Newton watercolors, and I will do my best to point those colors out to you as we go through the tutorial, but really you can use any colors that work for you for these lovely flowers and glass jars. So let's get into it and paint some really adorable yellow poppies with some eucalyptus branches in a tiny pink glass jar. Let's get started. All right, we're gonna start this painting by sketching out our glass vase or jar. For this particular one, I'm going to be doing a square jar. So I'm gonna be using my pencil to sketch that out lightly, and then I will be picking up most of these lines, the darker lines, with my kneaded eraser or white eraser to make nice light lines. If you are not confident sketching out this jar, this square jar by hand, that is completely fine. Feel free to use a ruler to make your parallel square edges, and then go in and just round them out with your pencil and then erase any unnecessary lines. And you can see here, I was struggling to get my lines and my corners straight by just freehanding it. So I just went and used that ruler to help guide me. And then I'm gonna go in and round out those corners for a more organic glass shape. And then I am including a line in there for the bottom because we are gonna see a little bit of that bottom of the jar in there. And then I'm just gonna very lightly sketch out the stems of kind of where I want my flowers to go. I'm not going to draw a detail of where all the flowers are going to be, but just a general idea of where I want everything to lay out in the composition to make sure I'm not being too heavy on one side or the other. And then again, we're going to pick everything up to make it nice and light with that kneaded. All right, let's just jump right in, and we're going to add in our eucalyptus branches or stems. And I apologize for my camera going in and out of focus here, but hopefully you can still see. And our eucalyptus stems or branches, I use sap green with a little ultramarine blue added to it. The more blue you add, obviously the cooler or darker and bluer color green you will get. So you'll see the combination when I add in the second branch. Eucalyptus branches are great and easy because they are just one long stem with these globular leaves on either side that are parallel to each other. So really easy to fill in compositions or add a cool color element to a composition as well, because you can see here I'm adding in that much darker, more bluish green, cool green color now. And next we're going to jump right into our poppies, and we're going to be using cadmium yellow and cadmium red for these. And our yellow poppies are just this very organic top shape that I put a lot of concentrated paint at the top, and then I go in, rinse off my brush, and start to blend down the base of that poppy with clean water. And then I add a few drops at the base while it's still wet of that cadmium red, very lightly, as you can see here. And as it dries, it will disperse and fade into that yellow and create this beautiful kind of organic yellow and orange hue. And then at the very base of that poppy, because we're kind of looking at the bottom of it, and the petals are pushed up, we see where the stem meets the bottom of the flower, and that's where I have that little bit of green, and I kind of let it bleed into the cadmium red and yellow at the top. And I'm just going to repeat that a couple more times to fill in these other flowers. You can see these two are overlapping, and again, I keep it very loose and organic. Drop in some of that cadmium red. Oop, a little too much. I'm gonna push it down a little bit towards the bottom of the petals. And then again, drop in some of that green. And I'm not bringing the stems all the way down just yet. I just wanted to make sure when I popped in the color at the bottom that the flower was still wet. But I can let it dry now and go in and finish the stems later. And oh, I think I made a mistake and I added a little bit too much green to the third flower there. I am going to take my brush and just pull some of that back down. I think I just had a little too much water still at the base. It hadn't dried enough. And then when I touched it with that green, it kind of got a little overwhelming. So just brushed that out and kind of went back and redid my steps. Added a little more yellow, added a little more cadmium red. And I'll add just a touch of green at the bottom so it doesn't get too overwhelming, and kind of finish up my stems here. And we're going to jump right into our glass jar now, and I'm going to be using a combination of Opera Pink from the Daniel Smith Jean Haines line and a little touch of French Ultramarine from Winsor & Newton. That's how I made this color, and then I watered it way down to have this really light blush color. Now with glass, I'm adding in my shadows first, that darkest area around the neck and around the edge of the bottle, and then from that I'm pulling out my midtones with clean water, as you can see here. So adding in that dark shadow, leaving areas of the paper completely white as my highlights, or where light is reflecting off the glass, and then pulling my midtones out of the shadowed area with clean water. So I get this really organic kind of, many different tones from the darkest color all the way through my lightest highlights. And you can see I really just keep playing with it. The thickest parts of the glass, so where there are corners or edges, you can see at the bottom here is always the thickest part of a glass usually, or a jar. I'm adding in some darker variants and then pulling color out of those. You can see here on the lip would also be a very thick part of the glass where you would definitely have a shadow. So I just keep playing, trying not to overwork it, making sure to preserve those highlighted areas, the white areas, because once you get rid of those, it really starts to go flat on you. But adding in some darker layers, you can see here at the bottom, I've got something funky going on. I'm gonna try to work that into the shadow on the table that's going to cast, if light was reflecting through this and it was casting a shadow, it's going to be relatively the same color or a version of the color of the jar that the light is coming through. So I am going to put another layer down here, and then I'm going to let that dry at the bottom and go through and add in a final detail layer to make a nice crisp line. And while that bottom part dries, I'm going to go ahead and finish up my stems at the top inside the jar. And again, I apologize for my camera going in and out of focus here. It will refocus in just a moment. But the stems, I just take the same color green that I used on the stems above or outside of the glass jar, and I water it way down, and I make my stems slightly thicker, and then I just drop in a few drops of clean water to kind of give them a slightly distorted look, and that way they look like they're inside the jar. You're looking through glass, which does distort the look of something as you see it on the inside. So you can see I went back in the bottom here of my glass jar and added in another dark line of that dark pink. I added a little more French ultramarine to it, added that along the bottom for more definition, and just blended that out. And there you have it, our tiny little poppies in our pretty pink jar. Thank you so much for painting with me today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for future videos, and also check out the other 3 videos in this 4-part series. Thanks again for painting with me. Always a pleasure, and I can't wait to see you back here again soon.